2024 basketball prospect Jalen Shelley has named Louisville as one of his top schools after taking an official visit to the Cardinals program over the weekend. We're going to talk about that recruitment and the Louisville women's basketball team's season-ending loss in the Elite Eight to Iowa on Sunday evening on today's episode of the show. So with that being said, let's get right on into it.
You are Locked On Louisville, your daily podcast on the Louisville Cardinals. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is going on, everyone? Welcome into another episode of the Locked On Louisville podcast. I'm your host, Dalton Pence. I serve as a credential media member for Cardinal Sports Zone. I also do some PA announcing work for the university in various schools. I want to take this time to personally thank you all for making us your first listen of the day. Just a reminder, the Locked On Louisville podcast is free on all streaming services 5 days a week, your team every day. To begin the show, we're going to talk about 2024 basketball prospect Jalen Shelley taking an official visit to the Cardinals program and the four-star guard/forward named the Cardinals as one of his top schools moving forward. We will then discuss the Louisville women's basketball team's season-ending loss to Iowa in the Elite Eight on Sunday evening. And then to conclude the show, we will discuss the senior class that will be leaving the program. So to begin the show, we will start in the men's basketball recruiting section where there's been a lot of recruiting talk over the past couple weeks. I mean, the transfer portal is as busy as it's ever been. There's been 3 new additions to the team for next season, 1 transfer into 2023 recruits, and then we talked about Carter Bryant as well, a top 5 player in the 2024 class, but hasn't been a ton of 2024 news in the grand scheme of things. But in the middle of last week, it was announced that 4-star prospect Jalen Shelley would be taking an official visit to Louisville the next weekend, which if you're listening to this now or watching this now, this is being recorded on Monday evening, so the previous weekend. And the weekend went so well that Shelley went on record and said that Louisville was one of his top schools. Shelley is ranked as the 53rd best prospect in the country according to the 24/7 Sports Composite. 6'7" forward from Frisco, Texas, plays for Prestonwood Christian High School. Like I said, 2024 prospect, very, very elite forward in the Texas area. In an article that he spoke with 24/7 Sports Cardinal Authorities, Jody Demling, he raves about the experience. He went to the NCAA Tournament games at the Yum Center this past weekend. He had this to say about the visit. I really liked what he has planned, meaning Kenny Payne, and the direction they're headed in. There was a lot to like. I really enjoyed it a lot. I learned a lot about Coach Payne and what he wants for his program. He means business, and he's a really good coach. He goes on to say, look at Coach Payne's past and all of the guys that he's coached. He's such a great guy and a great coach. It's so nice in discussing the Yum Center, and they had all the March Madness stuff up, and it's such a nice arena. So about as good as you could have hoped for regarding the visit, outside of maybe getting a commitment, but regardless, very solid that he had a good time. It seemed like gelled well with the staff and had a good experience not only on campus, but also, the facilities and getting to experience March Madness, which if you haven't, experiencing the NCAA tournament, especially the second weekend, specifically those Elite Eight matchups, I've had, a very solid, opportunity over the past couple seasons. I was at the Kansas-Villanova 2016 Elite Eight and then the Virginia-Purdue Elite Eight, both at the KFC Yum Center, and it is an atmosphere that is just unrivaled. So for a recruit to be able to witness that in the the respective college arena would be huge for Louisville in terms of recruiting. But the visit went as well as to suggest from Shelley himself that Louisville's one of his top schools moving forward. So what would he bring to the table to Louisville? And why would it make sense for him to come to Louisville? According to 24/7 Sports recruiting analyst, let's see, Brandon Jenkins, sorry, the name escaped me for a minute. He had this to say. Shelley is a long and lean lefty forward that is very talented. He has a good feel for the game and shows the ability to make plays with the ball in his hands. His offense usually comes in transition where he flourishes and has the instincts to make the right play. The biggest knock on him is his motivation to play with an elite motor. Shelley has the upside to play the game of basketball on an elite level, but needs to add more aggression to his play, asserting himself and leading with his athleticism and feel to make the right decisions off of a live dribble will determine his ultimate level. Also, kind of adding on to that, 24/7 Sports National Basketball recruiting analyst Travis Branham says that his size, length, and athleticism and skill set for the position are all impressive. He's fluid, can put the ball on the deck, make shots from three, and is a good passer. There's an immense natural talent there, and he's clearly turning the corner from prospect to player. Needless to say, Shelley, a very, very talented prospect. What's very interesting about this recruitment is that, is the creation ability for his size. It's not every day where you see players, 6'7", 6'8", 6'9", that are able to create off the dribble like Jalen Shelley, a very, very extremely athletic player who, like Jenkins says, very solid in transition, does a good job of, getting up the court with the ball in his hands in transition, attacking mismatches. It's extremely tough, I feel like, to stay in front of Shelley because of his ability to handle the basketball. And he has shown that shot creation ability off the dribble, which for being 6'7" with that athleticism, easier said than done to be able to keep that in check if you are an opposing defender. So you can see why college scouts would be extremely high on his game. You look at some of the offers that he has, Alabama, Houston, Kansas State, LSU, Oklahoma State, TCU, Tennessee, Texas, Texas A&M, Texas Tech, so on and so forth. So there's some very solid, programs going after Shelley. One thing that interests me is the deviation and the differentiation in the rankings. According to 247sports.com, he's ranked as number 106. In the composite, he's number 53. So that means one of the other recruiting sites, whether it's ESPN, On3, or Rivals, has him rated a decently amount higher, or those three are higher than 24/7 Sports. So that just leads you to wonder, okay, who's right? Is 24/7 Sports more, is that going to be more reliable in this sense, or is it closer to the composite? I think that's still to be determined. I've seen some Louisville fans get a little bit concerned about the motor, and I guess that is a concern if you hear about a player that doesn't have an elite motor. But, I mean, we're talking about a junior in high school, about to be a senior. I don't necessarily put too much into that right now because you watch the film, and I think the film doesn't lie. I mean, you see, I think sometimes we can get really, really, we can start to micro-criticize things, and if the motor's the one main thing that you focus on, I mean, sure, it could be used as a criticism, but at this point in time, I mean, I'm not worried about that too much because of the talent that he has. Granted, Louisville fans that just watched a team that struggled with consistent effort, I would understand where that would come into play as maybe something that you will get and have some concern about. But I'm not necessarily worried about this particular recruitment. I think that Shelley has the ability to be an absolutely phenomenal player at the collegiate level. And then obviously for Louisville, or coming to Louisville, that would make sense, a Power 5 program where he could see the court early. Great facilities, as he said, Coach Payne obviously building that relationship with. So that's something to focus on as well. But overall, I think that, there's a lot to like about Jalen Shelley's game. I'm going to focus on the positives rather than the one criticism at this time. And I think that, there's some potential there. There's some possible real star level potential there if, he's able to refine his skill set offensively and being able to take that next step as a basketball player. So I'm glad to hear that he had a great visit, and I'm glad to hear that Louisville is one of his top schools moving forward. I'm interested to see who also gets visits along with Louisville and see what a possible decision time frame may be for Shelley moving forward. So we're going to take a little bit of a step in a different direction, head over into the women's basketball side of things, where the Cardinals unfortunately lost in the Elite Eight to the Iowa Hawkeyes, 97-83 in the Elite Eight on Sunday evening. We'll talk about that loss here in just a second after we talk about our friends over at Built Bar. The Built March Madness app is here. We know you have a favorite bar or puff, and now's your time to make it count. Go to BuiltMarchMadness.com to vote for your favorites. You know I'll be voting for the cookies and cream bar. It's been my favorite for quite some time. You can vote, and when you do vote for your favorite bar or puff, you'll be entered into a drawing where 50 lucky Locked On listeners will get a free box of Built. Not only that, but one Locked On fan will win a 12-month subscription to Built to have Built's best bars delivered monthly straight to your door. You have to try Built. It has all the healthy components of a protein bar and all of the tasty benefits of a candy bar. Run to BuiltMarchMadness.com right now to vote for your favorite bar or puff and pick up a box while you're there. You can vote every day in March, so hop in and support your pick over at BuiltMarchMadness.com. Okay, heading on into the second segment of the show, the Louisville women's basketball team's tournament run was cut short on Sunday evening when they lost to the Iowa Hawkeyes in the Seattle Regional, 97-83. The Cardinals, the 5 seed in the region that saw Stanford lose in that round of 32, was a win away from getting to back-to-back Final Fours, but they ran into one of the best players in the country and a red-hot offense in the Iowa Hawkeyes. Chrislyn Carr was the story in this one, 41-point triple-double. She had 41 points to go along with 12 assists and 10 rebounds. There was talks of the official scores giving Chrislyn Carr a rebound that she didn't get late in the game. I don't care. I mean, 41, 12, and 9. 41, 12, and 10. What's the big difference there? The storyline was that she was absolutely fantastic, and you sometimes just have to tip your cap and say respect and move on. Iowa was on an extremely solid tear last night. Shot 54% from the field, 46% from behind the arc. I mean, look, it's going to be hard to beat a team that shoots 54% from the field, makes 16 threes, almost 50% of their threes, and then makes 23 free throws. Louisville, I mean, didn't necessarily play all that bad. I mean, they had 83 points. If you would have told me that the Cardinals scored 83 and lost by double digits, I mean, it's hard to really be mad at that performance. I mean, defensively, it was a little not necessarily to be desired. I mean, at the end of the day, if a team's scoring 97 on you, I mean, there's really not much more you can do. There is a situation to where, I mean, you have to guard open shooters. There were too many situations last night to when they tried to send the help defense at Chrislyn Carr, and she just found the open player. And that's something that, you can't overlook, is her ability to find open teammates that honestly is almost as impressive as what she's able to do scoring the basketball, and what makes her as difficult to guard as she's been all year long. Best player in college basketball this season, but not necessarily something to really gloom over, because at the end of the day, I think that this team definitely overachieved. A 5 seed coming into the NCAA tournament. I understand that they were playing their best basketball as of late, really took it to Notre Dame in the ACC semifinals, and then held their own against Virginia Tech. But, a 5 seed, if you would have told me before the tournament that this team was going to make it to the Elite Eight, I would have, taken that outcome 10 times out of 10 and twice on Sunday. So, it is what it is. Unfortunately, it was a situation to where I think that Louisville had their opportunities in this game. Went up 8-0 early on, had situations to where just gave up too many open shots, had too many costly turnovers to where they got stops, but turnovers out of bounds. Being able to just capitalize on those turnovers. I mean, the Louisville ended up turning the ball over 14 times. I mean, they turned the ball over less than Iowa, but they just weren't able to capitalize on that. And then that kind of goes back to, the second chance points. Iowa had one more rebound, which not necessarily too much more of a deviation there, but it's kind of one of those things to where Louisville, known as a defensive team, great offense will almost always triumph over great defense in a lot of cases. So one of the situations to where you look at and it just is what it is. So end of the season for the Cardinals. They end the year 26-12, not necessarily how a lot of fans and analysts had it predicted for the season, coming in as a top 15 to 20 team in the country and end up being a 5 seed in the NCAA tournament. I think puts a lot of emphasis on what Jeff Walz needs to do in the transfer portal. But that is a conversation for a different day. There are definitely a lot of spots to be able to, to address that to address those needs in the portal. A lot of losses that we'll talk about here in the final segment of the show coming up here shortly. But overall, I mean, I think that, there will be a lot of people that kind of complain about the officiating here. And look, I think that there's an avenue to talk about that stuff. And I think that it's not something that I like to talk about officiating a ton, because I think it's lazy to say that a team loses to insert team here because of officiating, and that's just not the case, especially when you give up 97 to your opponents. But there were some situations last night, especially early in the game, where Olivia Cochran got knocked to the ground, a blow to the face, and there was an offensive foul call, but not looked at further for a possible flagrant, not looked at for a possible ejection. There were some other instances where I think Caitlin Clark got away with some push-offs and she got that star treatment. But like I said, that's to be expected. And I'm not going to be one to, claim conspiracy or anything like that. I think it is what it is. But, at the end of the day, something that you just have to, accept it for what it is, tip your hat, to the Hawkeyes moving forward. This is a team that, all starters, I think they led NCAA history with 90 starts between the starting five. So unfortunately, I think that turnovers and just overall leaving players open, perimeter shooting defense was another issue for the Cardinals in this one. So ultimately, just something that you just have to, like I said, tip your cap and move forward. So But like I said, to conclude the show, we'll talk about the senior class that will be moving on here in the next segment after we talk about our friends over at FanDuel. The tournament almost over. Final four here in the next weekend. There's no better place to get in on the action than FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. That's because right now FanDuel is giving new customers a no-sweat first bet up to $1,000. That's $1,000 back in bonus bets. If your first bet doesn't win, just go to FanDuel.com/lockedon to sign up today to claim that no-sweat first bet. You can wager on everything from the money line to point spreads, which team will be cutting down the nets, and more. Don't miss your shot at a no-sweat first bet up to $1,000 when you join FanDuel today. Just go to FanDuel.com/lockedon to sign up. Make every moment more with FanDuel. All right, heading into the final segment of the show, discussing the 2023 senior class that will be moving on from the Louisville women's basketball team. A lot of players to discuss. Mykasa Robinson, Chrislyn Carr, Morgan Jones, Liz Dixon, and Josie Williams and Norika Konno. Like I said, very instrumental in getting Louisville to where they are as a program, whether it was multiple year players in Mykasa Robinson that stayed all 5 years or incoming transfers that only played one in Jones, Cece, and Josie Williams, all played their own respective roles for this team and for this program. Obviously, the big name here, Mykasa Robinson, the number one in career games played here at the university. Granted, she did have that fifth season to utilize, but nonetheless, an instrumental piece to this Cardinals team, to this Cardinals defense, and to this program as a whole. Obviously, not necessarily a player that was ever known as a scorer, never averaged over 6.5 points per game. But this is one of those situations to where a player's impact spans well beyond the stat sheet, well beyond what she was able to accomplish in the box score. One of the better on-ball defenders in Louisville history. I won't go as far as saying the best defender in Louisville history because, I think that's for Angel McCautry, but definitely one of those players that, if you're playing against Louisville, that's not a player you want guarding you. But overall, definitely going to miss Casa, miss, how unapologetically Louisville she was, 5 seasons being able to play a key role, hustle plays all over, never took a play off. And one of those players, Jeff Walz said throughout senior season or this past season, Mykasa epitomized what it meant to be a Louisville Cardinal, that grit, that determination, that, that premier and signature toughness that, players of this program embody, but definitely a player that is going to be missed. And this is going to be an impact that I think moving forward, it's not going to be one of those instances where you won't understand the impact that she leaves until, unfortunately, she's gone. And that is now a very real reality as we are in the post-Mykasa Robinson era here at Louisville. Moving right on along, obviously the incoming transfers, there are three of them: Morgan Jones, Chrislyn Carr, and Josie Williams, all played their respective roles. I would probably argue as far as saying all three of them never necessarily lived up to the expectations that any of them had coming in, but that's not to say that they didn't contribute in very solid ways. Morgan Jones averaged 9 a game, was put on the second unit and played as a rotational player sort of halfway through the season in ACC play, but really started to give some solid minutes in the NCAA tournament. Defensively speaking, for sure, had some big-time performances this season. I'm trying to remember which performance it was. It was a 25-point and 10 rebound performance against her former team at Florida State. Chrislyn Carr was an extremely solid three-point shooter for Louisville for the conclusion of the season. Josie Williams, on the other hand, didn't necessarily see an instance to where she played a ton, only 8 minutes per game, but still 3 points per game, had some solid performances here and there. The other two seniors, Norika Konno and Liz Dixon. Dixon transferring in from Georgia Tech, played 4 seasons with the Cardinals. A very steady post presence for the team, both on offense and defense. Never necessarily took that next step after averaging 8 points per game and 5 rebounds per game in 2020-21, but still provided some solid minutes off the bench, started a couple games here and there, was an extremely solid player for the Cardinals moving forward. Was an extremely solid player for the Cardinals in her time at Louisville, both defensively and offensively. And then obviously Norika Konno, the last but not least senior we're going to talk about today. Couple seasons with the Cardinals, coming in from Japan, played 4 seasons with Louisville, only started 8 games, all coming this past season. She was inserted into the starting lineup kind of at the back end of that senior season and had some solid performances shooting the basketball, a rotational guard in her time at Louisville. But definitely, like I said, all of the 6 seniors moving on will be missed. And like I mentioned, this is an opportunity now for Jeff Walz to really revamp this roster and try to gear towards a national championship run. And his work's cut out for him. I mean, you have UConn, you have your South Carolinas. Now with Kim Mulkey at LSU, you have to assume that, the way she's recruiting, that they're going to get to a level that, potentially Baylor was in the 2010s. So that's something to focus on. So hopefully, Louisville is able to figure things out in the NIL department, which it seems like they're going to. It seems like they're doing that from some people that I've talked to, but definitely something to look forward to in that regard. So definitely grateful for the senior class and wish them the best of luck in their future endeavors. So to conclude the show, thanks again for making Locked On Louisville your first listen today. For your second listen, check out our brand new podcast, Locked On College Basketball. Experts Isaac Shade and Andy Patton bring you everything you need to know on and off the court, plus hear from big-name experts, coaches, and players throughout the basketball landscape. Locked On College Basketball, available on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts. We are about 1,300 YouTube subscribers. Thanks to everyone that is liking, sharing, rating, subscribing to the podcast on all streaming services. But that's going to wrap up today's episode of the show. Everyone have a great day, and we'll see you right back here really soon.